Fertilization, what do we make? The zygote,
The zygote.
excellent. And cleavage, we make the blastula,
Blastula.
excellent. Gastrulation, we make the,
Gastrule.
there we go. And then we make neurulation, we make the embryo. Or, yeah, zygote, embryo. And then we go through development until metamorphosis might take place, or in humans, continuous growth. So, we now know how it works. As a good scientist, you say what? How can I screw with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to screw with it. And how we're going to do this is we're going to start cutting things into planes. And we're going to say, can I make Siamese? Can I make, chimera? Okay, you can do all kinds of different things. You say, let's try to do it. So we want to see what happens when we cut in certain planes. And so the first one, if I cut right down the middle, okay, through everything, right down the middle, I produce identical twins. What would happen if I don't cut down the middle, but I cut through the plane? What would happen? Dr. Chen, I'll give you a giant hint. See, it's not great.
I picked one half would develop normally.
I could see, but it's.
Yeah, let's see.
But I don't sense that like horses are gonna be fine. It's not, we're not gonna be.
From our experiment on Monday, what did we know we had? If we took the Hensen's node out and transported it from the quail into the duck, it developed properly into a quail. So what does that tell us? Only a few cells are responsible, right? So if I cut through this, one half gets those cells, the other half does not get the cells responsible. So turns out one half develops correctly. Okay, so that tells us the cells, very certain cells, are responsible for this. Well, we know now those cells are Hensen's node. We know that they're producing noggin to do neurulation. If we don't have that, we can't do anything. So we're not going to produce it. So we say, okay, well, what if we start screwing with something even more? What if I take a little bit of this one and put it in the project.
I put embryo would die and embryo would develop to a certain point and stop developing.
I put C and B, so develop to a certain point, then stop, and then two body axes, but would be joined together.
So why don't you like make two-headed monsters? You seem discriminatory.
Well, I just want to. So I'm guessing that I should.
So I take this, which has all the cells required to form it, attach it over here, and what do I produce? A two-headed monster. That is for real. Okay? So what can we conclude about this? So Dr. Joe, what can we conclude?
You probably just, you just probably put another,
So what can we conclude? Certain cells, a select few of them control all of development. That's what we can conclude. As long as you have those cells, you will develop correctly. Well, then nothing would happen, right? So now, let's take a newt, which we just watched develop, those cells, and put them on a frog host. What do we develop? All right, Dr. Stern.
I picked new.
Like a hybrid.
You didn't notice this trend at all. So we take a newt, put it on a frog host, so all the other cells are frog. But it turns into a newt. That is cool. Why? A few cells control everything. Do you and a newt share the same genes to make muscles? Yes. Share the same genes to make bones. You don't need any replicating new genes like that. All this is a few genes that tell body orientation and planning.
So what if you, what if you transplanted a few cells that help with development, but not all of them? Would it become a frog? Or
Yeah, it depends on how many you did.
so it just depends on if you got them all.
Correct. If you have all of Henson's node, you have all of those cells, it will do it. So, knowing this, what is your next line of thoughts? You're the Frankenstein scientist. What do you do next? Humans. You try chimeras with humans, okay? The Russians did this. They took embryos of humans and merged them with chimps. And you can get body plans developing pretty well through development. You can do it with many other ones. Not necessarily the most ethical thing in the world, but kind of cool. As far as I'm aware, they never took them through like gestation. But that's another thing, moving on that round. Okay. So this tells us few cells are responsible for making a body plan. Once you have those cells, you can make a body. This is really kind of cool. So those that are going into genetic engineering, you want to make me a dinosaur. Well, now you know how to do it, right? We take a few of those cells. I want a 3-headed dinosaur. Now we can do that. That's kind of cool. You take those and plant those on the embryo. You get this chimera. Oh, we're doing cool stuff now. So we'll do that. So, to start with, think about chickens. Next week's lab is really cool. So next week we're going to look at development. And so what I'm doing this week, so the eggs arrive tomorrow. They arrive tomorrow. This weekend I'll come in, and I'm going to open up this shell just with a little drill, and then I'm going to insert either alcohol, nicotine, or THC into the embryo. And we're going to grow them for 96 hours. So chickens take about 21 days to grow, so we're only going to get not very far into development. We're going to get past neurulation, we're going to get to organogenesis. But we're not going to have a baby chick in there, don't think that. It's going to be a primitive streak. It's going to be very, very small. You'll be able to see like the heartbeat from your naked eye, but under a microscope, you can see it really well. And we're going to look at development, and we're going to look at it, what happens under each one of those conditions. But in order to do that, we have to understand a little bit about how chickens work. Chicken eggs are different for development than you. You are a placental mammal. Your eggs are really, really tiny, and if fertilized, embed into the uterus. That is not true for a chicken. Chicken eggs are huge. All the resources required to make a chick are in that egg, regardless of fertilization or not. Okay? So let's imagine it is fertilized. And if you're raised chickens, you have a rooster there within 6 months, it can be fertilized. They will store the sperm in their oviducts for a long period of time. They're fertilized. The egg gets released, goes through the oviduct, the chicken lays the egg. We steal the egg, and then we allow it to develop. What will happen is you go through developmental stages. The whole egg is a cell, but a lot of it is just nutrients. It's just all the proteins, amino acids, the nucleic acids, everything to make an embryo. But it's the actual embryo itself is very, very small. The embryo will go through blastulation, gastrulation, and neurulation, and it is tiny. It is like that big inside the actual egg itself, and then it will grow. This is where we are going to get to by 96 hours. Okay, so we will see the primitive streak. You will get the head, eye, heart, and somites, and maybe some organogenesis taking place. We do not go past this stage. You just can't see a whole lot. But we will see that, and you will see, okay, is there any differences with neurulation? Is there any differences with organogenesis when you expose to each of those? With that said, you were a farmer. Eggs are, you can even make a lot of money on eggs right now. How do you know the eggs are not fertilized? On your own, Chris. All right, Dr.
I said he makes sure no sperm enters the hen's oviduct, and he puts ovulation inhibitors in the hen's food.
All right, I'm having re-answer, then we'll discuss it. We'll see where your answers have changed. Seconds. 2, 1. Somebody explain to me why if you selected this, you should walk out that door.
It's wrong.
Very wrong. Why is this so wrong that we shouldn't be in the room? Talk to each other.
It can't. Why is it wrong? I don't think that's.
Ovulation releases the egg.
Yep.
You would be the shittiest egg farmer in the entire world if you gave ovulation inhibitors.
Yep.
That literally doesn't work. Okay, come on. Like, okay. On a serious note, that is a terrible, terrible answer. All right. Anybody raise chickens? How do you do it? Flashlight. It's so easy. If it is a fertilized egg, there's a little red dot. That's it. If you've opened up an egg before when you're cooking your omelet, there's a little red dot in there, just a little weird yellow colored. That's because it's a fertilized egg. Chances are it's no big deal because what happened was those chickens laid the eggs. Those eggs get collected on a daily basis. They aren't past 24 hours after fertilization before they put them on refrigerate them. So you're stopping development anyways. So it wouldn't be, you wouldn't get a full embryo. Most you'd get a blastula. Now there are certain cultures that let them go further along and then cut them open and eat them. What's that called? It's Filipino. Bula? What is it? Say it right. Say hey, white guy don't know things like this. What is it? That word. Have you ever eaten it before?
My father has described it to me, but I have not.
Okay. It's a chick. You open up your chick, fry the chick, hold the chick there. My understanding is it's really sweet. And the reason why is as the egg is using these things up, it's producing more to glucose. And from the metabolic pathways, it'd be a little bit more sweet. Anyways, so tell me, why do we eat eggs? But why? Doctor, what's going on? What does an egg do?
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. Like, eggs have a lot of nutrients.
I stole it off of YouTube. So why do we eat eggs? They literally have all the ingredients to make an animal inside them. They're concentrated ingredients. They have nucleic acids, they have proteins, they have fats, they have everything needed to make an animal. But there is no fabulous source for nutrition. Okay, so next week, gestational stages does not correspond to days. Gestational stage corresponds to what level of development it is. This is the we have our now head. We can start forming the frontal lobe cortex. We also start developing this primitive heart right here. The heart you will see beat. It's kind of neat. In your egg, you might see 1 or 2 blood cells circulating the whole embryo. It's kind of cool. You can literally just watch the blood cells circulate through. It's pretty translucent because it's so small. And you have your head. At this point, you have full notochord development and spinal cord. You can keep them alive for about an hour after you crack the egg open on a microscope. But it's dead. Forebrain, hindbrain, brain structure. Brain structure really doesn't develop until really close to birth, especially because we need apoptosis to get brain folding. And we have the genes surviving on. Then we have the heart. That heart is very much a portal heart. Doesn't have chambers. All it is cells that beat, and when you beat, you're circulating fluid. We are a closed circulatory system, but this is not necessarily a closed circulatory system yet. Everything hasn't closed up. You have your spinal cord that runs down the center, and you have somites. Okay?
I picked bones of the spinal column and cells of the spinal cord. I gotta be right.
What are your segments in your body? Your spinal cord. The bone of your spinal cord, so it's so many. That is your segments. So we look at it. You have your notochord, which we're gonna, that's your dorsal tail. We're gonna encapsulate that with calcified. Calcification of tissue is actually pretty straightforward. You actually probably experience this and didn't even realize it. When you get arthritis, things like that's calcification of your tissue. If you've ever been hit really hard in a location with like a baseball or something, and it forms like a little knot, and it's a hard knot for the rest of your life, that's calcification of tissue. So when your cells, something goes wrong, your cells can either die or your body can block them off and calcify them, fill them with calcium to turn them hard. So that's what happens here is these cells just become full of calcium, and we create our spinal cord from them. We also would have disc. The disc get put within the somites. Your disc are what give pressure and support and flexibility to your spine so you're able to turn and bend. At the same part, this is the reason why you all have back problems later in life. Your L5 will have problems. Yeah. Not really. No. It's one of the two ways of doing it. Typically, if it's internal tissue, it'll calcify it. So, for instance, like you'll have tumors in your body. It's like people have tumor for like, see in like TV shows where they have it for like 40 years. And they'll open it up and it'll just be this calcified hard stone in the shape of like a fetus or something inside of them. Well, that's because the tissue's being calcified. Somite defects, scoliosis, a very common one, where something will form with an abnormality. You can have increased size on one side, which gives you a tilt. Decreased posture, all of those things. Our spines are kind of weird because they're very much built for being quadrupedal. And because we are bipedal, that put a lot of pressure on our discs, especially our lower disc, that lumbar L4s, L5s. Yeah, it might help. It'd be funny. Collapsed disc or evil disc. Klippel-Feil syndrome is where you basically don't have a neck. And then you also have those vertebrae get collapsed down. And then, lots of other
No
different
mames,
disorders.
se calentó mi presidente.
Related to somates. Another issue during development is apoptosis not taking place. Apoptosis typically takes place very much at the very end of gestation. So the genes survive and turns off. If it happens with the brain where apoptosis has not taken place, you just get an individual who has no cognitive function. In 2001, a child, around 8-year-old, was brought to the University of Washington Medical Center. They were from the Philippines. And the child could grasp, could suckle, and could have eye movement, and do all those responses, those cute little responses that we, love with babies. But would cry all day long. So they were like, this is really interesting. So they did a CT scan, and they detected that the child had no brain. So a tumor had developed right here on the spinal cord during development. And so it had no brain. It was born without a brain. So based on this, what does that tell you about all of those traits we associate with being cute babies? Yeah, talk chair. What are all those traits? What actually controls those things?
I think the brain controls all of these functions. With no brain, they can't be controlled.
It will just like grab your finger. Oh my god. We're also really strong.
Why are we getting so strong? They're meant to grip onto the bombs so they held on.
Oh my god. My baby sister right now, she grabs my hair. Two things.
Sylvie's in the grab nose and mouth.
I'm scared of my nose right now.
So what does that tell us about all those traits? They don't come from the brain. That's really interesting. So, as we move forward development, we're going to have case studies. And we have 2 case studies today. This is your first case study. Okay? So this is a real thing. This happened. This child was brought. Is this child alive? Debate it. Is it?
Mentally, I guess it's dad.
Someone who's really bad at alive.
You got your car back. How far did they make it?
That's too long.
Did they do any damage? That's good. Were you on drugs last night? So I told Remy a story that years ago, somebody stole my car and they made it like 40 feet because they couldn't drive a clutch. So anti-theft for you guys. All right. This is a really hard question. I'm gonna let you start off because you said yes. Why do you say yes physically? Okay. Excellent. That is the law in Florida. In the state of Florida, you are legally alive when your heart is beating. That is not true in the state of Washington. Does anybody know the state of Washington law? It's brain function.
You're alive and
Okay. So then I have a question. Is Dick Cheney alive in Florida? He has no heart any longer. It's a biomechanical heart. So that's a good funny joke. Okay. You know anything about Dick Cheney? That's a much funnier joke. The older people know who know this joke. George Bush's speech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I know.
He shot his friend in the face. Yeah, anyways, he's
Okay, yeah,
kind of,
no idea.
and, okay. Much funnier if you're older. Gotta age myself. Okay, so in the state of Washington, it is not alive. Good question. So now I have a question for you. Okay? What is the difference between pain and pleasure? Talk to each other. What's the difference between pain and pleasure?
Pleasure feels pain feels bad.
It's like a.
Chemicals released by the brain due to the stimuli.
You know what also happens when,
Signaling comes in a continuation,
Mhm.
right? Pain and pleasure can actually mix really. It's a fine line there between pain and pleasure. So this child is responding to stimuli to the environment. Can its brain interpret any pleasure or give any dopamine responses?
No.
There is no dopamine responses. Excellent. But it is responding to the environment, so it is interpreting everything as pain. The reason why it's crying nonstop is everything is pain. There is no pleasure response here. So, let's debate this. What do you do?
I'm sorry, I just. That's what I would do. I would want, like, if I was a mother, my child, and I was like, I would think 20% of the viewers that you guys like. I would do it. I don't think that it can. So, you know.
It's all nerves. So if you ever fall asleep on your hand, okay, and your hand starts coming back to life, what's the first thing it feels? Pain. Because your nerves are detecting pain. Well, at some point, your brain shuts that off, okay, and says this is no longer relevant to me. How many of you are wearing underwear? All of you didn't realize you were wearing underwear until I just asked. Now you feel your underwear again, right? Why did you not feel your underwear? Was it important? It's not going to kill you. But if you were a baby, the first time you put socks on a baby, it hates them. It sucks. It's painful. First time it loses its pacifier, it is painful. It didn't learn that it's going to come back. The brain hasn't taken over yet. The brain doesn't control these things until much later in life. So as we start explaining developmental, why children cry when they drop a pacifier for the first time. Oh, because it doesn't know it's getting it back. It lost it forever. Why does it suck when you put clothes on it, right? Why do all these things happen? Well, over time, you become desensitized to things. Your brain starts developing patterns and recognition, and it says, I'm going to be okay. This isn't anything to worry about. But if you don't have that to override it, what is it detecting? Pain, 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 pain. So, what should the doctors do? Euthanize. So in the state of Washington, this child was never alive. So it would have been dead at birth because it had no brain. So euthanization would be the humane thing to do. It was euthanized. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. That is a good question. And so this is where legal scholars will debate this. If you go back to the Shriver case in Florida, a woman was on life support in pain. They put her in coma. She didn't have any brain activity for about 20 years. And there was a legal fight on what to do with her. And eventually they decided to euthanize. So this is where my PA announcement comes out as an adult. You guys are all becoming adults. I don't care what you do and what your beliefs are, etc. have it legally written down. Okay? Why? Well, if you are 18 years old, I'm gonna talk to you about a story in my family. Okay? If you are 18 years old, you are legally an adult. You have some horrible event happen to you. Okay? How do anyone know about your wishes? They don't.
They don't
But
know
you
your
say, oh, my mom can take care of it. But you're an adult. Your mom has no legal rights over you any longer at 18. So now they have to go to court and you'll get a judge to approve this decision. Okay, which if your parents both agree, mom and dad agree on the course of action, no big deal. It probably takes a couple of days. It puts your parents through a lot of work, etc., whatever it is, and now they make the decision. But what if mom and dad disagree? Oh, now this is going to be a long-term, drawn-out battle and fight that's putting things through. I don't care what your beliefs are. I don't care what you decide to do. Have it legally written down. My little cousin had an event like that happen. And mom and dad were in a custodial fight and they wanted to hate each other and do these things. And so it took over a month and then she died. And then because the parents couldn't agree on anything even post-death, who claims body, had to go to a judge and she became a ward of the state because of that. So the state decided what to do with it. It took 30 days to release her body. So that's a PSA of get things written down. Living will is fabulous. Yeah, same thing. You living well. Let's get a living will. Doesn't matter how old you are. Update your living will. Tell it what to do, how to do it. All right. So PSA. Apoptosis, also webbed feet, fingers, all those things. Really common. Often you would never even know this took place in you. Webbed fingers is so common in births. I don't know, probably 1 out of 10 or something like that. Often on the day the child's born, they just literally take a knife and do it, and it's done. It's over. Yeah, cleft lip is so what happened is the tissue didn't develop correctly and it folded over during development, and so apoptosis took place in other spots and not. So cleft lips have to be surgically reconstructed. Yeah.
My cousin was
That's it. Apoptosis did not take place, and the reason why there's a scar is the doctor at birth, probably within a few minutes of being born.